أهلا بيكم في حلقة جديدة من بالمصري. It's been almost exactly a month since the last episode and I'm really sorry about that, but it's been an exceptionally busy month. I'll try not to keep it that long again. In the last episode, I read an excerpt from a novel by Ihsan Abd al-Quddus called أنا حرة, and I decided to do something similar again today, and I'm going to read a small section from the book Taxi by Khaled Al-Khamissi. Taxi came out in 2006 and it consists of 58 short chapters or sections in which the author recounts conversations that he had with taxi drivers over the past year. So according to the author, these are all actual conversations that took place, and it's relatively easy to read. The narration is in Fusha and the dialogues are all in Ammiya, so exactly in the language that the taxi driver would have used, curses and all. Sometimes the narration is very minimal, so that a chapter would immediately begin with the taxi driver's narration, so there would be hardly any Fusha to read in this particular chapter. As anyone who ever took a taxi in Egypt knows, taxi drivers can give a lot of insight into the life of ordinary Egyptians, their frustrations, what they think of the political situation and all that. So in this particular chapter that I picked, chapter 3, the narrator takes the taxi on a day when there are protests going on in Cairo, led by the movement Kifaya. And according to the taxi driver who tells the narrator what's going on, he tells him that this is a really minor protest, just 200 people, and he kind of mocks this movement, he mocks their demands, which are very remote from the ordinary Egyptian, and he says that the real revolution was going to happen back in the 1970s during Sadat's time in office, and according to the taxi driver, this was the last chance for a revolution to take place in Egypt, and that since then the government has been aware of the dangers of such big protests and has known how to keep people silent by keeping them hungry, basically. So obviously the taxi driver would not have known that 5 or 6 years later there would have been a proper revolution which toppled Mubarak, and that his predictions were basically all totally incorrect because Egyptians were still capable of organizing an uprising. Anyway, in today's reading, if you look at the blog post, I have divided the text into 3 columns, which sometimes become 2 columns. So on the left side, you will see the English translation that was published in 2008, and the translator is Jonathan Wright. In the middle, you'll find any instances of Fusha that occur in this chapter. So there's a decent amount of narration in this chapter, so that will be in the middle column. And then on the right column is either my Egyptian version of the Fusha or the dialogue with the taxi driver. After reading, I'm going to go paragraph by paragraph, and I don't want to focus too much on vocabulary because you have the English translation there and you can easily check what a word means, but I want to focus on certain idioms or expressions that aren't immediately obvious even when you read the English alongside the Arabic. Okay, let's begin. من النتائج الاجتماعية المباشرة لحركة كفاية على الشارع المصري إنها رفعت البنديرة في أيام المظاهرات. طبعا أقصد بكلمة البنديرة الأجرة، لأن البنديرة موجودة كأداة تجميلية بس بتزين العربية وتقطع بنطلونات الزباين اللي بيقعدوا جنب السواق. في اليوم ده كنت واقف في شارع نادي الصيد في الدقي رايح وسط البلد، وكنت بدور على تاكسي. كل ما شاور لواحد منهم وأنده وسط البلد، السواق يشوح بإيده ويكمل. ودي حاجة غريبة رجعتني لأيام التمانينات الكريهة، لما كان أسهل لك بكتير إنك تلاقي كنز علي بابا من إنك تركب تاكسي. وبيكفي الرجوع لكاريكاتير الأيام دي عشان تدرك معاناة زباين التاكسي أمثالي مع الفوطة الصفرة حوالين العداد. أيام الله لا يرجعها. دلوقتي تقف أقل من دقيقة عشان تركب عربية تاكسي جميلة تختارها أنت من ضمن عشرات العربيات. إلا في اليوم ده لغاية ما سواق تاكسي تفضل ووقف وطلب مني 7 جنيه. صرخت أنا ليه؟ رد عليا في مظاهرات والدنيا فوق بعضها وهوصلك في ساعة. أقولك 7 جنيه مش هيقضوا، هاخد 10 جنيه. ما طولش عليكم، قبلت أدفع 10 جنيه في المشوار اللي بدفع فيه عادة 3 جنيه. وفعلا المشي كان مستحيل. الشارع كان متكدس بالعربيات اللي لازقة في بعض وما بتتحركش ولا سنتي واحد، وكأننا في جراج عملاق اتحول لسجن واحنا محبوسين جواه. أنا إيه الحكاية؟ السواق مظاهرات، مش عارف ليه، في يجي 200 واحد مسكين لفتات وحواليهم يجي 2000 عسكري و200 ضابط وعربيات أمن مركزي قافلة الدنيا. أنا كل الزحمة دي على 200 واحد؟ السواق الزحمة مش في المظاهرة، وهي دي مظاهرة أصلا. إحنا كنا زمان بننزل الشارع ب50,000 ب100,000، إنما دلوقتي مفيش حاجة ليها معنى. كام واحد نازلين من بيتهم عشان حاجة محدش عارفها. الحكومة مرعوبة، ركابها بتخبط في بعضها. حكومة والله نفخة وتقع. حكومة من غير ركب. يضحك بصوت عالي. أنا إيه، الحكومة محتاجة كوارع؟ السواق ولا ينفع معاها حاجة، نفخة كدابة، ولكن المشكلة فينا إحنا. أنا إزاي؟ السواق عارف إيه يا أستاذ بداية النهاية؟ أنا إيه؟ السواق 18 و19 يناير. استعجبت جدا من الرد ده، كانت أول مرة أسمعه. اتوقعت إجابات كتيرة تقليدية عن بداية النهاية، لكن 18 و19 يناير جديدة. وسألت نفسي، يا ترى يعرف إن المظاهرات دي اللي السادات سماها انتفاضة الحرامية حصلت سنة 1977؟ معرفش ليه بالظبط سألت نفسي السؤال الغبي ده. أنا ودي كانت سنة كام؟ السواق في السبعينات، يعني حوالي سنة 79. أنا وليه دي كانت بداية النهاية؟ السواق دي آخر مظاهرات بجد في الشارع. عملنا في الستينات مظاهرات كتير، وفي السبعينات قبل الحرب كان في مظاهرات ياما، وبعدين السادات الله يكحمه مطرح ما راح طلع قرارات غللنا الدنيا. الدنيا اتقلبت. الناس كانت فاهمة سياسة، نزلت الشارع وخلت السادات يرجع في كلامه. سمعنا ساعتها إنه خاف وهرب على أسوان، وقالك لو قلبت جد ههرب على السودان. جبان. يوميها والله أي حد كان ممكن يمسك السلطة، بس ما كانش في حد. شوية غلابة عايزين الأسعار ترخص. أيام عبد الناصر عملنا مظاهرات كسرت الدنيا، وفجأة لقيناه وسطينا في ميدان التحرير، ولا طلع أسوان ولا حتى بيتهم. الكلام ده بعد النكسة، مش فاكر امتى بالظبط. أنا برضو ما فهمتش ليه 18 و19 يناير كانت بداية النهاية. السواق الحكومة عرفت بعدها إنها لازم تتصرف، وإن المظاهرات دي أصبحت خطر عليها بجد. 18 و19 يناير ما كانتش أي حاجة، دي كانت بداية ثورة. لكن تقول إيه، ما كملتش. ومن ساعتها الحكومة زرعت فينا الرعب من الجوع، خلت كل زوجة تمسك في إيد جوزها وتقوله اوعى تنزل، العيال هتموت. زرعوا الجوع في بطون كل مصري. رعب خلى كل واحد يقول يلا نفسي، أو يقول وانا مالي هي جت عليا. 18 و19 يناير كانت بداية النهاية. يا ترى 17 و18 يناير كانت فعلا بداية النهاية؟ وإيه النهاية دي اللي بيتكلم عنها السواق ده بكل البساطة دي وكل الثقة دي؟ Okay, that was chapter 3, or الحدوتة ثلاثة, because the subtitle of the book, so the title is Taxi and the subtitle is حواديت المشاوير. حواديت is the plural of حدوتة, and in Egyptian Arabic it is a little story. Usually children's stories would be referred to as حدوتة. Obviously it comes from the Arabic word حدث, to happen, to occur. So a story is referred to as حدوتة. Also حكاية, of course, and the plural of حدوتة is حواديت. حواديت المشاوير. مشاوير is the plural of مشوار, and مشوار can mean an errand that you do, or it can just mean like a journey, a short journey. So stories of short journeys. So yes, so this is حدوتة نمرة 3. I've numbered all the paragraphs in the blog post, so you can refer to that as I go through them one by one. In paragraph 1 and 2, the author speaks of البنديرة, and he says, of course, by bundera, I mean the taxi fee. What this bundera refers to is the actual taxi meter. And I always knew that it's probably an Italian word. So after checking, I found that it comes from the term la bandiera del tassametro, which is the flag of the taximeter. Okay, so we learn something new every day. As you may, if you visualize an old taximeter, it would have something that resembles a flag sticking out of it, and I don't exactly know how it works, but this is how it looked like. And in the past, taxi drivers used to operate their taximeters, and then when they got to the destination, they would check how much the client has to pay. But then over the years, this has become obsolete, and then the taxi driver would just make up the fee that they want, or they would agree on a fee beforehand. And so the taximeter would just be sitting there, just a completely obsolete thing. So people still talked about the bundera in the terms of the fee, but not because it was actually in use. And in paragraph number 4, he talks about الفوطة الصفراء, the yellow towel. And again, this is a very particular thing which taxi drivers used to do, and that would be back in the 1970s. He explains how it was really difficult to get a taxi back in the 70s. And if someone who's listening knows the story of why it was so difficult to get a taxi, please get in touch with me, because I don't really know. I know the taxi drivers would put this yellow towel over the taximeter to indicate that they're not available, basically. So if you saw this yellow towel, you knew not to even try to stop the taxi. In paragraph 5, the word dunya comes up, or sometimes we pronounce it dinya, sometimes dunya, and it means the world. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of uses of the word dunya in this text today. So the first time is in paragraph 5, and the taxi driver says, في مظاهرات والدنيا فوق بعضها. So literally, the world is on top of itself. And what he wants to say is that it's absolute chaos. When you say الدنيا فوق بعضها, the world is upside down. This is actually what it says in the translation. The world's turned upside down. It means there's absolute chaos. The next instance of dunya is in paragraph 8, where he says that the police have blocked off the roads, and he says that عربيات الأمن المركزي قفلة الدنيا. So they have blocked everything. So dunya here just means everything. Then again in paragraph 14, where he talks about Sadat's decisions which made everything more expensive. So طلع قرارات غللنا الدنيا. He made everything more expensive. And then he says الدنيا اتقلبت. And again, the world turned upside down. Again, absolute chaos. In paragraph 16, he says that in Abdel Nasser's days, المظاهرات كسرت الدنيا. Literally, they broke the world. And here it actually has a positive connotation. So كسرت الدنيا means they were very effective protests. كسرت الدنيا. Sometimes you can say that a movie, الفيلم ده كسر الدنيا. It was an incredibly successful movie. الدنيا is of course used in many other expressions in Arabic, in Egyptian Arabic. So if I want to say the weather's hot, I would say الدنيا حر. الدنيا حر. The world is hot. Obviously, I'm not talking about the world. I'm just talking about my immediate surroundings. It's really hot. Okay, going back to the top. In paragraph 7, he wants to say that there was a complete standstill in traffic and that the cars were not moving an inch. And in Fusha it says, السيارات لا تتحرك قيد أنملة. They didn't move a fingertip. In Egyptian Arabic, we would not use this word. Instead, I suggested saying ما بتتحركش ولا سنتي واحد. سنتي is short for centimeter, a centimeter. Paragraph 8. The driver wants to say that there are about 200 people in the demonstrations, and what he says is في يجي 200 واحد, and then he says يجي 2000 عسكري. Literally, of course, يجي means it comes to around 200 people and 200 officers. He could have said حوالي, so this is another word we use for about, almost, approximately. So we can say حوالي 200 واحد, we can say يجي 200 واحد, we can say تقريبا 200 واحد. In paragraphs 10 and 11, the driver wants to say that the government is very weak, its knees are shaking, and then he says it doesn't even have knees in the first place. So he says ركبها بتخبط في بعضها. ركبها بتخبط في بعضها. Its knees are hitting each other. So its knees are shaking, it's very nervous, it's lacking in confidence. And then to emphasize this even more, he says حكومة من غير ركب. It's a kneeless government. I wouldn't say that this is a common expression, but it works. So this is to exaggerate the idea that they are so weak. They are so weak they don't have knees in the first place. The narrator then asks him, إيه الحكومة محتاجة كوارع? Kawara is a word that's usually used to refer to animals' legs, and it's something that people sometimes eat. So you can order kawara in a restaurant. Not my favorite thing, but now you know, kawara is cow's legs or something. I'm not really sure what part of the cow is it that people eat when they eat kawara, but it's part of the legs. In that same paragraph 11, we have نفخة كدابة. السواق, the driver, says نفخة كدابة. He describes the government as pretending to be more than it actually is. So نفخة is to blow up, and كدابة means it's false. I like the translation here. It says the government puffed up with false pride. So that's what it means. نفخة كدابة. You can tell someone بلاش النفخة الكدابة دي, like don't pretend to be something you're not. Skipping to paragraph 14 and the last bit of that, the driver says that in the 70s there were numerous demonstrations, there were so many protests. So he says كان في مظاهرات ياما. كان في مظاهرات ياما. So ياما placed after a word can mean that there was a lot of it, so like countless something, okay? الراجل ده عنده فلوس ياما, عنده فلوس كتير, عنده فلوس ياما. He has a lot of money. It's not a word that many Egyptians use, so you'll find that a lot of people would say, I never used that word in my life. Obviously, ياما can be used in different ways. If you say, ياما رحت المكان ده, I've gone to this place so many times, ياما رحت. So you place it at the start of the sentence and you say, ياما, I've done so and so. I've done it so many times, countless times. He then says, وبعدين السادات الله يكحمه مطرح ما راح. So this is a kind of an interesting way to curse someone. So Sadat obviously had died by then, and what he literally says here, the driver, and Sadat, may God send him to hell. So يجحم comes from the word جحيم, which is hell. Allah يكحمه مطرح ما راح, wherever he may be now. Obviously, wherever he may be is supposed to be hell. But yeah, don't use that expression unless you're really, really, really angry at someone. You know, it's I don't endorse that kind of language. Okay, skipping to paragraph 19. Yeah, in the same sentence you'll find that he said zoga and then he says guzha. And obviously in Fusha it would be zawga and zawg. In Egyptian Arabic, if the word is on its own, we would say zoga. أي زوجة, أي زوج, any husband, any wife. But when it becomes part of an idafa, when we want to say the husband of or the wife of, what we do for the husband is we say guzha, guz ukhti, the husband of my sister. If we want to say the wife of, then we don't say guzit. That is not a word we use at all. We don't say zugtu and we don't say guztu either. We say mirato from the word mar'a. Mirato, mirat, أخويا, the wife of my brother. Don't ask why, that's just the way it works. So, guzha and mirato. In that same paragraph, so any wife grabs her husband's arm and tells him, اوعى تنزل, اوعى تنزل. Don't you dare go down, and what it means here is don't you dare go on any demonstrations, don't you dare go protest the hunger that we're living in, because there will be terrible consequences. So owa is a word that we use when we want to tell someone to don't you dare do something. Do not. So it's a very strong, emphatic way of telling someone not to do something. He could have said, تقول له ما تنزلش. Don't go down into the streets. But he says, اوعى تنزل. If you're talking to a woman, you'd say, اوعي تنزلي. Another expression in that same paragraph is where he says that everyone is so terrified now of protesting that everyone says, يلا نفسي. كل واحد بيقول يلا نفسي. I'm sure you're aware of the expression يلا, let's go, let's do this and that. يلا نخرج, let's go out. يلا just means come on. يلا نفسي, يلا to myself is an expression that means I'm only looking out for myself. And usually it's used in expressions where I'm talking about other people. So كل الناس بتقول يلا نفسي. I wouldn't just of my own accord say يلا نفسي. And then he goes on to say أو يقول وأنا مالي. Why is that my business? Why is that my problem? أنا مالي. It's like when you tell someone أنت مالك, it's none of your business. أنا مالي means it's none of my business, it's not my problem. And then he goes on to say هي جت عليا. Literally, did it come on me? That means something like, is it all down to me? Like, am I the one responsible for doing anything? And another example of using that would be, let's say someone threw rubbish on the street, and then someone says, hey, why are you throwing rubbish on the street? And you say, هي جت عليا أنا. يعني everyone is throwing rubbish on the street. I'm not the one who's going to make a difference. And you could also say, let's say someone's complaining of a particular problem, and you say, هي جت على كده. هي جت على كده. Is that the only problem in your life? There's so many other problems. Why are you highlighting this particular problem? هي جت على المشكلة دي. Okay, we've reached the end of the text. So, yeah, lots of expressions we've looked at today. I hope you found it useful. Let me know if you have any comments or questions or feedback. You can either put a comment underneath this episode or use the Contact Me page, which, by the way, is working again. There was something wrong with it last month. And yeah, I'll be very happy to hear from you. إلى اللقاء في حلقة جديدة من بالمصري.